You're listening to Disruption Digest, a podcast where we look at the world of AI in plain English. I'm Jamie Hugh, your host.
And I'm Jarrett Miller, your co-host. And today we're going to be talking about the use of AI in the public sector. And we're lucky to have two guests that are deeply involved in this space, Kelly and Tim. Welcome, guys. Would you like to introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go first. Hey, I'm Kelly Cason. I'm a technical specialist here at Microsoft, and Tim, a teammate of mine. We both represent the state and local government customer base. And so, we're working closely with public sector communities and trying to bring them better solutions with the Power Platform.
Fantastic. And I'm Tim Hanewich, Power Platform Technical Specialist here at Microsoft. And like Kelly, I work exclusively with state and local government customers of Microsoft's on sort of ideating the vision for the future of government with AI.
Very exciting, chaps. Very exciting. Before we get started, though, of course, we're going to talk about JobsGPT. And what that is a custom GPT that we built out that really just responds to questions as Steve Jobs would. And so it's a fun little icebreaker. And so that I would ask, do you have a question in mind that you would like to ask JobsGPT?
Ooh, okay. It seems as though AI chatbots are increasingly integrated into the workspace these days. So I'd love to know, would AI chatbots gossip about humans in their virtual break room?
That's a good question. Okay, let me just put it in. And you know the good thing is they made these custom GPTs available so that now if you're on the free tier of ChatGPT, you can access it too, which is really cool. Okay, here we go. So here's an answer. This is kind of intriguing. It says, absolutely. Picture a virtual break room, a sleek digital space with minimalist design. There, AI chatbots exchange whispers about human quirks. Did you hear another human asked how to reset a password for the 10th time this week? It's like a never-ending soap opera. But remember, even in the virtual world, that chatbots always say, stay hungry, stay foolish. So what do you think of that?
I don't
Amazing.
know if that's what Steve Jobs would say, Jamie, but I know he'd probably sound like that. So I think his tone is definitely copied in there.
That's funny. It's incredible, really. I mean, the way the GPT is trained is we pointed it towards some of his speaking style, some of his sources, and is able to just pick this up. Technology is incredible. Ask me this 3 years ago, would it's been possible? I'd have laughed at you. I genuinely would have said, this is just some 40, 50 years in the future, and here we are,
I have to tell my wife, we are living in the future. You may not see it just yet, but we're here.
That's a good way to put it, Jarrett. That's a good way to put it. All right, well, let's kick this off. We've seen some really great AI use cases in the commercial sector, and it's been a hotbed of activity. And one of the most common questions that certainly I get asked, I'm sure you get asked as well, Jarrett, is how can we use AI, right? How can we use it? What are the use cases? So that's great, but if you ask me, I think one of the best purposes about AI is making our collective lives better, at least from a perspective of the public sector. So Kelly, Tim, I'd love to get your opinion on the potential of AI in the public sector.
Yeah, happy to, Jamie. And this is a question or a topic that Kelly and I both ponder quite a bit, right? Being completely dedicated towards state government. We think that despite not being the most cutting edge technically, we think that government is probably the most ripe for transformative impact in AI. And there's sort of three main reasons why we think that. Number one, government is very process intensive, right? You can probably think across every industry every government has. There's so many very common, very mundane, very repetitive tasks going on, done by humans. And if there's one thing I learned about mundane, common, repetitive tasks, is that in today's age with AI, it's probably not the best use of human time, right? You probably want to spend your human time, which was of course more valuable, invested elsewhere. That's number one. Number two, governments naturally are extremely data rich, right? Governments have data, everything from demographic data, tax data, financial data, even external environmental data. And of course, data is very important in the world of AI. AI can use data to improve, to make accurate predictions. So having data is a huge asset and a huge leg up today in 2024. And then thirdly, finally, governments especially are very hamstrung by budget constraints, of course. And when you have a constraint on a budget, you really have to focus on trying to do more with less. And today, AI is probably the best place to start to achieve that. So AI will, of course, help with driving efficiency, productivity, and ultimately, again, saving human time by offloading to an AI model very repetitive common tasks going on. So that's sort of why we see AI being impactful for government. Kelly will talk more about exactly where we see it happening first and foremost.
Depending on who you ask or who you're talking to, the government having all that data on you may or may not be a good thing. A question that I've got is, whenever you see governments starting to use AI and think about use case for themselves, are they mainly looking right now to improve the internal processes they have and speed those up, or create AI use cases for more public-facing applications that will help the government serve the public even better?
Yeah, great question, Jarrett. I think it's both, right? It's everything across the board. And generally speaking, right, AI is just going to make the pace of innovation and transformation even faster. We've already been working on this for some time with things like low code, no code, right? These tools that help with development. AI is just another catalyst in that digital transformation process. So at any point of the process, whether you're working with external constituents like citizens and partners and vendors, or you're helping, that government staff internally, you're going to improve the lives of everyone involved, right? Think of something like citizen engagement. Any type of 311 solution where a citizen's trying to get in contact with the state government, right? It started out with omni-channel, right? I just need to engage with you on the channel that suits me. Maybe I only have a flip phone, so I have to call you. Or maybe I only have access to a computer at a public library, so I need to email you, right? Now that kind of evolves into, well, when I send you an email, a record is created automatically. If I'm attaching a document that I filled out by hand or online, I can leverage AI to extract the information out of that document, port it into my data source, build an app on top of that, and review things internally. So there's so many different ways to kind of support that process, right? Even if you just look at the Dynamics 365 for customer service solution, embedded within that application for service representatives is a plethora of AI, sentiment analysis, real-time transcription, and translation. You don't need to hire a whole team of people who speak every different language. You can translate that directly within the transcription, or you don't need to, as a citizen, wait for someone who speaks your language to be available to get the support that you need. You can search a knowledge repository that's native to your CRM, or maybe that knowledge lives in SharePoint, or it lives on-prem, or it lives in a third-party source. You can layer a language model on top of that. And instead of having to match up keywords, now it's just, hey, what is our policy on this X, Y, and Z? And it returns you an answer from any one of those repositories that it finds the answer. This is impacting whoever is trying to get help and get answers, as well as the person trying to find the information and supply the answers, right?
Are y'all seeing pretty good adoption rates in different municipalities? Or are you trying to, I think Tim mentioned earlier that governments are generally laggards and you got to drag them along. What are you satisfied with the adoption rate, and what type of results are you seeing whenever municipalities do adopt these technologies?
Yeah, we're seeing heavy interest, Jarrett. Naturally, government being funded by the people, it's also a very risk-averse industry. So naturally, before governments dive in and they volunteer plenty of citizen data to be potentially used by an AI model, there have to be things in place legally to allow that to happen. So we are seeing tremendous interest across the board right now in government. But before we get there, the first step is not really adoption. The first step is, the internal chatter about how to adopt AI and the path that each state, each county, each city has to be on to incorporate that into its processes. So we are seeing that right now. Adoption of AI in general is there. Later on, Kelly will show you sort of how, but sort of the coolest, the most recent, Gen AI is still pending at the moment.
Kelly, you mentioned this kind of use case within Dynamics customer service, right? So I'll be curious to understand, are the majority of use cases, AI use cases, kind of off the shelf based on these solutions, or are you seeing requests of solutions that are, that need to be constructed and built out? So I guess is off the shelf versus build, which one is more popular, do you think?
It's a great question. Yeah, I don't have a direct answer. It seems to be a pretty even distribution between both, right? You have your large use cases that require first-party solutions like Dynamics, but then you also have really pointed singular solutions that need a specific functionality. Tim and I have built several different things. An example of that would be like a park reviews solution, right? A public works department, instead of hoping people post on Bing or post on Google and you're going and manually collecting that data as it relates to how they feel about public parks in your area, you could have a point solution for people being able to go to a portal or send an email, share their thoughts about a park, let you know that, hey, I had a great time, or B, hey, the basketball hoop is broken and somebody needs to fix it. Would love for you guys to take care of that. So yeah, I think you could go either direction with how specific you get with it.
All right, Kelly. Well, you got my my interest with this park reviews app. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so we put together a solution here that I want to share with you. It's a park reviews solution, and a quick high level before we jump into it. We first looked at the intake process, right? How do we receive these reviews? Whether somebody's going to a web portal and filling out a form, or maybe they're just sending an open text email about some thoughts that they had regarding an experience at a park within your area, right? And then once we have that review submission, we're going to run it through a little bit of AI analysis, right? We're going to look at sentiment of the review, as well as some entity extraction, being able to identify the park name that they're referencing dynamically. And then once we have that in our model-driven app as a record, we can then look as the government employees who can analyze, review, and then ultimately respond to the person who submitted that review. One thing I wanted to call attention to on the Power Platform is a large library of low-code AI models called AI builders. So these are pre-built models that leverage AI. They've been around for years, and even as popular as they are, I still feel like they're underutilized because they're super powerful. You don't have to build them out yourself or train them to any super depth range. You just train them to your specific need, right? So whether you're trying to extract text from documents or invoices, whether you're trying to detect objects within images or do text translation, these exist, and I recommend taking a peek at them. In this solution, I use the ones located on the right there, sentiment analysis, as well as entity extraction. And if we look at an example of entity extraction, you can see that within this text sample, we have identified several different components or characteristics of a computer that we want to extract and categorize, whether that's the processor, the memory, the graphics. This is a great example. And then you can port that information into your data source. And in my case, I use the Dataverse. So we use this to identify Memorial Park was in bad shape today. Well, we want to identify the name of the park. Very simple example, but something that you would have to read through manually that we're going to now do automatically. It gives us a confidence score of how confident it was that it identified something that we directed it to look out for. And then now we can then use that downstream. And a lot of this is being powered by Power Automate in the background. So when we receive an email to a shared email inbox, we're then taking the body of that email, converting it to text, and then running it through a couple AI models after we have created a record in the Dataverse. So we've actually created a column called comments where we are then storing that text from the body, and then we're running it through two AI builder actions. The first one being sentiment analysis, positive, neutral, or negative, very simple, but very powerful and easy to use. And then the second piece is that entity extraction model where we are running those same comments through and we're identifying which part this person is referencing dynamically. The last piece of that is once that record is created in our model-driven app, we also have an Azure OpenAI model that we're accessing through an embedded Canvas app. So a little bit more custom, a little bit more specific way to leverage AI to draft an email response dynamically based on the feedback that was given to us. So now if we take a peek at this video, this will show us that process from top to bottom. So as a citizen, I just went to Sunshine Park. I've just written a review and I now want to submit it to the local government, right? I've mentioned it's an absolute gem. We have our shared email inbox. I've also mentioned the name of the park, right? So this is all just standard text. I'm sending this email, and based on the receipt of this email, we'll then kick off a couple of those processes that I just shared. If we look at our reviews, we'll now have a new record that has been added right here up at the top. And we have several data points in here that were never submitted by our citizen, right? She simply sent a review, and now we have a record. We know which park to associate this record with, thanks to our entity extraction model, right? Sunshine Park. We also have a rating of 1 to 5 stars, and this is a basic calculation we're doing based on the AI detected sentiment. Positive is 5 stars, neutral 3 stars, negative would be 1 star. And then we also have that sender's email address that we can again leverage later on to respond to this person. So now we have a really nice, concise way to view a record that no human had any hand in other than the citizen submitting the review, right? We just get to view it once it populates. Now, once we want to respond to this person, we can load our embedded Canvas app. And you'll see straight away at the top, we have a static prompt, something that we are giving it from the beginning. I work in local government. I receive the following feedback from a resident. I need to draft an empathetic response and draft it based on being from metropolitan parks. The thing that we're dynamically feeding that prompt as well is our comment, right? We know that we want to feed it the relevant comment for this record. So we port that into the prompt and then we get our suggested response below. And it writes us a really nice email. Thank you for your kind words about Sunshine Park. And, we can send that off. And now that is a full, complete interaction done, almost exclusively by technology, right? But we have a really nice interaction with our resident. That email that was sent off is now added to our timeline at the bottom as an activity. So then you can start to see how this process evolves and how AI is assisting us really provide a better service in this case, where I can come and I can review past email interactions. I can see this business process flow up at the top that might direct me to next steps. And, sort of calling back to an example previously, let's say the review is negative. It was about a broken basketball hoop. That's not something that's going to be fixed by an email. So we can let them know that, hey, we've received it, we're working on it. But then you can convert that into a work order, dispatch a technician, and then much deeper AI support you can have through identifying a technician with the right skill set, who has the right proximity, and has the availability to go and actually make that repair and then, complete a second phase of that process if that's something that you wanted to do.
Wow. So I guess my question, Kelly, is this is all done behind the scenes, right? So if I wanted to implement this is an astounding use case. Would I need to know all the code behind it, or how easy is it to build something like this?
Yeah, great question. So full disclaimer, I have no pro dev experience. I'm not a developer. I have, strictly leveraged the Power Platform, which is a low code, no code tool set to build this solution. So as I mentioned, a lot of the AI processing is through AI Builder, which are pre-built models built by Microsoft. All I do is kind of tell it what I want it to do with the parameters that are given to me. So it's really easy to set up, but really powerful on the back end. And so everything you saw was point and click.
How easy would it be to take this idea for a park app, and I'd imagine that you could expand the use cases to be feedback around other things that the government is in charge of, like maybe roads or other things. So how easy would this be to retrofit in order for the municipality to also better service other areas?
Yeah, totally. Great question. I mean, the solution you saw is really use case agnostic, right? Parks is just the example, but people are sending emails all the time. People are opening tickets or requesting support all the time. So, really the lift there would just be branding the solution to the use case that you have, right? You mentioned roads. We work with Department of Transportation, DOTs, all the time that are constantly trying to intake issues with the roads, right? Cracks, sinkholes, closed roads, traffic patterns. These are all things that you could insert into this use case easily. While this solution is entirely low code and something that I can build, something that citizen developers contribute to, the beauty of the platform is you always have the ability to take it to the next level. If you have that pro dev skill set, if you're much more comfortable with custom Azure OpenAI models and you need to do something hyper specific or something like that, you can always graduate to a pro code solution, something like Iris, which Tim and I have worked on, which is an investigative solution, which, I believe he'll be sharing with us as well.
All right. Well, Tim, if you could, I'm intrigued. Investigative work with AI. This could take us to the next level.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thanks for the tee up, Jamie and Kelly. Kelly, really great demo. And we're happy to show you a solution that does go a little bit further, one step further, and does venture into that sort of what we call pro code realm, where we're not just using low code tools like Power Platform, but we're also using, custom models behind Azure, for example, and custom frameworks like .NET in this example here. So IRIS stands for Intelligent Resourceful Investigation Support AI Assistant. So it's a system that I designed with Kelly. It's designed to help customers specifically in public safety and justice solve cold cases. So I'm sure you've all seen, in shows like CSI, for example, trying to solve cold cases. Well, IRIS is designed to assist with that, and it does it across a few different areas, which I'll get to here in just a moment. Why don't we dive here into a demo of IRIS? So I'll talk here over the video, and I'll pause when required. So you'll see first, IRIS is an AI assistant that lives within a sort of case management system in Power Platform, of course. So in each case, I have everything you'd expect, right? Contacts, witnesses, I have evidence as well, people's interviews as to what happened, and like body cam footage, for example. But the actual Iris AI assistant lives within the Iris tab. So I'll log in here, and it's not really AI, but I thought it'd be pretty cool to include here is that for any case point of interest, we can pull up easily, Bing map imagery and see both from a satellite top down, but also a bird's eye view from either the north, east, south, or west, the view of where this may have happened. So after that, I'll show you here, for this case, I have two testimonies, right? I have multiple interviews here for this case. And again, usually an officer will go to people that may have witnessed it, and they'll record from them their testimony as to what happened. And oftentimes, oh, my mistake, gentlemen. Let me rewind there again. So you'll see here that I have multiple testimonies or multiple interviews as part of this case here. And again, oftentimes what will happen here is an officer will visit people that may have witnessed the situation, and they'll ask them to describe what happened. And they'll collect from them anywhere between a paragraph to multiple pages of documents stating what they saw. And usually it can be very challenging for an officer, for a human, to go through each one and read word for word, line by line, what happened. And more importantly, compare what happened against someone else's testimony as to what happened there. And then find, of course, in them both where they agree and where they disagree. So this is a really strong area that we can use AI in, where we can take these testimonies here and create a backend system which will format them and then provide them to the GPT-4 model, for example. And the GPT-4 model is excellent at comparing and contrasting. So as the officer, I'll click here on Analyze, and it'll again offload those to the GPT-4 model and come back to me with a very well-written comparison between both testimonies. And you'll see here it's trained to provide me with the comparison in two sections. The first one being where they agree, right? Very importantly. And then finally, even probably more importantly, where they disagree. Actually showing me side by side what one person said that was not agreed upon in the other testimony. So just one way for me as an officer to very quickly compare the two of them, go through each one and say, here's where I should probably focus my time and my questions again when I see that person again or in the future. So again, a great way to save time for officers.
How long would this normally take an officer to analyze two different?
Probably multiple weeks, right? Just the time to coordinate a loan to meet with somebody takes time. And then you're talking, hours of time to meet with them, hours of time to work with them, collect data, hours of time to review the data. And then once you have multiple in place, you then have to have that reviewed by a human being. And because we're humans and we make errors and mistakes, it's possible that you may have missed a very important detail. So sometimes you might have to have multiple staff members of yours review it, which would absorb tons of human time. But again, while AI is not perfect, it's pretty strong in noticing every small detail and doing that without bias, right? It's not going to be, for example, impacted by it slept poorly last night or hasn't had its coffee just yet. AI will work when you need it to work. And so already this is saving tons of hours of man hours for our customers.
Reduce the coffee budget too.
Yes, it does. And a lot more than that, Jamie. So that was the review of interviews or testimonies. I want to show you too, you probably all know, right, in a cold case, you have to collect a lot of evidence out there. And evidence can range nowadays from everything, right? We have sensors, cameras everywhere. And a big source of evidence today is Axon body cam footage, where you're recording, for each officer on the scene, you're recording hours and hours worth of video. And that video is not structured, right? Again, it's very time consuming for a human being to sit down and watch every hour of video, right? Potentially tens or even hundreds of hours of video for a certain situation and try from that to pick out details. What I have here, for example, is the entire 2.5 hour transcribed video from a 2.5 hour body cam video from an officer in the Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito case. What I have here is absolute word vomit. There's no punctuation, there's no structure. Me as a human trying to read that and figure out what's going on is very challenging. But actually, we've discovered that the GPT-4 model is exceptional at reading unstructured text and from that deriving structure from that. So again, I could as a human being read this right here, line by line, word for word, or better yet, I can choose to simply have Iris summarize it for me. So what I'll do here is I will click on the summarize button on the right there. And again, I'm going to offload the entirety of that script to the GPT-4 model, and Iris will come back to me here with a description of what happened. It'll tell me, number one, the summary. And again, from word vomit, it knows who's speaking. It'll pick out details, understanding, of course, my attention to detail as an officer of the law. And then finally, it'll wrap up there with next steps, more so saying, how did it resolve? How did it end? So that way, either an officer or an admin or even a commander can quickly see what happened in situation. Here, for example, I have a 911 call audio. Again, pure transcript, pure text, no structure. It's not showing me who said what, but Iris can analyze that and come back with details. And again, knowing my role, it knows that I care very deeply about stuff, for example, like the details, right? The plate number, the plate state, right? The color of the van, stuff like that, what happened, and then where they went. Stuff like that, for example, is very important. Again, it would take me hours to review tons of transcripts and footage. By using the system, I'm able to very quickly pull out details and use them to influence how I do my work. So that was for evidence. I want to show you one more cool piece of Iris, and I'm sure you've all seen it again, is where oftentimes a suspect will describe the potential, the person that did the crime, and based on that description, an artist will draw up a sketch of what they may have looked like. And then the officer would typically use that during the process of investigating. So they'll say, for example, did people look like this? Or they'll post it in certain areas. Again, that process is a very time-consuming process where you have to go to a witness, collect from them the description, go to an artist, pay the artist to draw that up. They return back. You have to then take that and ask the witness, is this accurate to who you saw? And they say, yes, it was, or no, it wasn't. And that could be a 10 times cycle going through an update for that photo. Now, you've probably heard plenty, Jamie and Jarrett, about, text-to-text LLMs, right? Generating text from text. Keep in mind, we also have very powerful multimodal abilities now with, for example, DALL-E 3, right? Generating photos from text. So using DALL-E 3, I can, for example, what I have here is take a description of that suspect, and then based on that, I can pass along through Iris to the DALL-E 3 model that description and ask for it to create for me 4 composite sketches of that suspect. So let's generate here. It'll offload for me, and then again come back to me with 4 accurate drawings. And on the spot now, literally that may have taken, maybe half a minute, for example. On the spot, I'm now able, with that witness, to go through each photo one by one and say to them, does this person look like who you saw, yes or no? And based on that, they'll choose to either accept it or reject it. And then based on that, I can then even further use that feedback to influence another query and get another generation, for example. And after a period of time, I can narrow down exactly what they looked like. And again, that's possible through the speed of DALL-E 3, where before the artist would, take time to get back to them and so forth. This now can all be done on the spot. So again, I have 4 images here. I can now, as the officer, one by one, go through each one and say, is this accurate, yes or no? And based on that, choose to accept it or reject it. This one, for example, might not be accurate, so I'll choose to reject it. And this one here might be accurate, so I'll choose to accept it. And then finally, last but not least, with the last one, and I'll just choose here to reject it as well. So of the 4, the witness accepted 2 and rejected 2. So now on the home page here, I can now pull up the previously accepted images that are, of course, agreed upon by witnesses as being most representative of the person that they saw commit the crime. So I can now use that, of course, in further interviews. So, and then last but not least here in Iris, of course, it's a very common question. Are you able to save the generated content by Iris? And the answer, of course, is yes, we can. So everything you create through Iris, whether it be text, analysis, images, or whatever it might be, are all stored here in Power Platform.
Well, that is truly fantastic, Tim. Thank you so much for showing. I'm kind of curious though, because obviously we've mentioned this concept of low code, no code a lot, right, with the Power Platform and being able to do this. How do you think this functions with AI? Can they coexist, or what is the future direction of those two technologies?
Absolutely, Jamie. Yeah, great question. The future, absolutely. The future of any software, period, involves AI. And I think that we at Microsoft are very well positioned to entertain that, right? Because number one, we have cutting class models like, for example, GPT-4 under our hood and others like 5, for example. And now number two, we have a way to take those models and apply them to solve true business needs, right? For example, what we showed today in state government. So with both are a very powerful pair and very potent for transformation.
Yeah, I think when you have a pro code tool set as well as a low code, no code tool set, it's just, more tools on your workbench, right? And there's different ways to get to different solutions, and not everything needs to be built the same way. Not everything needs to be a grandiose, massive application. Maybe it's much more simple, much more focused, and even the people who contribute to the development of it have, a much less deep skill set, right? So now you're, through the use of AI, incorporating people who may not have been able to contribute to building solutions that might have bogged down a person with a deeper skill set, bogged down their time, right? That they could be spending building bigger, better, deeper, and more capable solutions. So I think it grows the community of development, and ultimately you're going to see some really cool solutions across the board, whether it's low code, no code, or pro code.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. This has been an eye-opening, I think, episode for Jarrett and myself, just to understand some of these great use cases. Man, to think about using AI to generate those pictures is fantastic. Appreciate it. Absolutely great conversation. Thank you so much. And until next time.
Yeah, it was a
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having us,
Jamie.
Jamie and Jarrett.